Harry, I just wanted to say, this is a peach and a prince. I dragged him into this, and I'm just infinitely grateful because he's wonderful company and a great journalist.
Oh, my goodness, thank you. You know, this is a tough job. Hanging out with Candice Bergen for an evening. Oh, jeez, twist my arm. We've known each other for a while.
Forever.
Yeah, interviewed you quite a number of times. Told me lots of things. Nothing like what's in this book. What made you decide?
Well, I just wonder. Really, I just think, what possessed me? And can we just get the fat thing out of the way so we can move on?
Yeah. Well, hang on a second, because I have the 3 Ps. Plastic surgery, pounds, and Prozac. So
where do we begin?
Where do we begin?
Probably with pounds, I would think.
Okay, sure.
That seems to be what's trending lately.
Ah. Well, you look fantastic.
Well, thank you, Harry.
So what about it?
Well, the pound, it's not a mystery. It's just, first of all, I'm breathing on 69 next month, so there's that. And so I'm just very lucky to be here. But, and I had some medical things after my late husband. I mean, anyway. And I just cannot live a life of soul and kale. I just can't do it. Just not in the cards. And I think I have a friend here, Miss Kennedy, who said, I was visiting her in Florida, and she said, breakfast this morning was green tea and a Malamar. And that's kind of the way I go about things.
Right. There was something else, though, that you said in the book about it. And you said you wondered if you were taking yourself out of circulation, so to speak. If there was a part of your, see, I did read everything.
Yeah, I don't even remember I wrote that.
You did say something at one point in self-reflection, saying, by doing this, am I taking myself out of circulation, so to speak?
The eat before being eaten syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, it's certainly a possibility.
Right.
I've chosen to ignore any logical thinking in this, but may I just say that, you know, no one is happy being overweight. You don't want to be overweight, but I just, I am, and there you are.
And how are we supposed to respond to that? The audience is not so sure. Let's talk about, the book is titled A Fine Romance, and there are at least 3 love stories in this book. And I want to start with Louis. As a resident of New York City for about 30 years now, I remember being on the West Side, and I'd see you guys. You'd be walking into the movie theater. You were just around. You were so present.
Yeah.
Only lived a couple of blocks away from you.
Yeah.
So you're popping up all over the place. It was not love at first sight.
No, we had a sort of rocky initiation. We were at a couple of events together, and we're both socially ill at ease at times. And I was seated next to him at a dinner in Los Angeles, and neither of us said a word to the other. We were just so uncomfortable. And then out of the blue, he called and invited me to lunch, and we went to the tea room and had lunch for 4 hours, and that was sort of it.
How much by surprise did it take you? Because it sounds to me from here that the match was struck and the fire just exploded.
Well, we were smart in that we waited. We sort of took it slowly, which I recommend. Because I think we didn't want to jinx it by, so we got to know each other first, and we just had a few dinners, and we went to the ballet, but there was just never much doubt,
Right.
if any.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There are many, many reasons to read this book, but not the least of which are you kept correspondence.
Yeah.
There are letters in this book from him that just are phenomenal.
He was a master letter writer, really. He just wrote he wrote beautifully, and the love letters, when people still wrote them, which is one of the casualties of the tech age, are just lyrical.
He may have been small, but his brain was huge. I started seeing him 3 times a week when I was in New York. I would have to steel myself every time I entered his office because I knew he would hold my feet to the fire. Why did I keep blocking any enjoyment at whatever? Oh, that's your shrink.
Yes. I wanted to head you off at the pass.
Yeah. I have interviewed a lot of people, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm any good at it. Here's among the things that he writes to you early in one of the early letters. It gives me such tremendous happiness to write you all this as clumsily as it comes. It's as if I'm writing myself a love letter for the first time, sharing and belonging. I know what it means now. Let's be April Fools for the rest of our lives. The world can't play tricks on us anymore. The fools are the wise. Wow. What in your life, right?
Yeah.
This guy comes along, you fall in love, and for whatever animal attractions may be going on, he writes you letters like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, it was the most romantic, seductive courtship. He was. It was wonderful. We had a very. We got married rather quickly, 6 months after we met. But it was exotic. It was restrained. I mean, we didn't travel much, but when we did, we took wonderful, adventurous trips. And he was such a fascinating companion because I would look over at night and think, I'm sitting next to one of the most brilliant men I've ever met, and this is what I get to do. I just couldn't believe my luck.
And he's crazy about you. Did you know you would get married?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get married. How long then before you got pregnant?
About 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I was 34 when I got married, so what was I thinking? I'll just take my time. But there was so much going on at that time with feminism, and I mean, it was swirling. The atmosphere was just sort of charged with it, and that's what gave birth to the Roy Lichtenstein cartoon. Oh my God, I forgot to have children. And I suddenly thought, I don't want to miss this. So I fortunately.
Were you a kumbaya sort of pregnant woman?
No.
No.
I was a cranky pregnant woman, and I put on 60 pounds. And my doctor said, you've put on your entire allotted weight gain in the first 3 months. I said, yeah, and I just kept going.
When is the moment, though? Because there's love stories. There's the Louis love story. There's the Chloe love story. When you were pregnant, did you know you were in love with this child?
Oh no, I really was kind of dreading this invader because our lives were just the two of us, and it was very idyllic, and I just thought, who am I bringing in to our life here? And then I had a nightmare or a sort of hallucination in New York. It was August, and I gave birth in November. And I woke up, and I thought, and I heard this rumbling. And I thought, it's a spaceship. It's a spaceship, and they have come to take my baby. and I shook Louis, and I said, did you hear that? And he said, yeah. He said, what was it? I said, it was a spaceship. And they're coming to get my baby, and he just turned over.
Now, Louis had 2 children from previous
Relationships.
Very well said. And how was he with this? Did he think, well, this is great, or?
He was taken aback because I sort of sprung it on him. I have to be frank here. And then he was very much on board with it.
Right, right. She wasn't an easy kid to start with.
No, I always called her my little cactus because she was just, she was not she didn't want you'd come in if she'd be crying, and then you'd try to hold her and she'd push you away. And so I had to go through, I just tried to tame her a little bit.
Right.
And now she's 29 years later. But I mean, then she calmed down. But I was told by Louis' family that Louis would have great, oui, il avait des grands colères. He would have really rages when he was little.
Ah.
Yeah, so there you are.
Apple doesn't fall so far.
No.
Right. So she starts growing up and starts settling down, and you look around at your world and you say, what's missing?
Well, yes. I mean, yes, I didn't date because I just didn't see any point. And I couldn't, frankly, face going back out in the dreaded dating pool.
Not there yet.
Okay.
We're gonna get there.
Okay, where are you headed?
So you have this kid who's 4 years old or so, right?
Yeah.
Louis traveling all over the world, making movies and doing amazing things. My Dinner with Andre, and et cetera, and you get a job. Were you looking for a job?
I was not looking for a full-time job, but I supported myself. I mean, Louis and I supported ourselves. We didn't have a common, I mean, we would share household costs, but so I needed to work. And suddenly I was sent this script. And finally my agent said, you have to read this because they're not even offering you for the part. Nobody had any desire for me to read for it. And it turned out to be Murphy Brown. And I read it on an airplane, and my daughter was sleeping on the floor, and I went, oh my God. And it was when you still had payphones on airplanes, so I went, I've got to do this, because it was, I thought, in many ways the answer to a lot. It was, first of all, just the best comedy writing I've ever seen. It was reminiscent of the great American 30s and 40s comedies, and so crisp and dry and sassy and smart. And I thought this would solve so much, because my daughter was getting to an age where you can't sort of take them from place to place all the time. And I thought, well, we would have one place to be as our base. My mother was there, my brother was there, and then Louis would be stuck with accommodating that. And that was a lot to ask.
Yeah. Who did CBS want for the part? Because they surely did not want you.
No.
But that's not a joke. This is absolutely the truth. They were not interested in you, and you actually kind of blew your audition, I thought, too.
Oh,
right?
It was a terrible audition. And who they wanted was, they wanted Murphy to be 10 years younger, and they said, why does Murphy have to come out at the beginning of the pilot from a month at Betty Ford, because Murphy went there for alcoholism? Why can't she be coming back after a weekend at a spa? And why can't she be 30? And why can't she be Heather Locklear? And so Diane English, who created Murphy Brown, said, because the whole point of her is that she's a woman who's struggling with demons and who's the tops in her career, and she's been fighting her way to that top for a long time. And so Diane, after I tanked in the reading, went back in and said to the then head of CBS that it was as important to her as to CBS that the show succeed and that she felt that I could do it.
Way to
I'd
go.
barely watched a sitcom in my life, much less,
Before that.
yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. You grow up in a household of comedy, right?
Yeah.
And in case you didn't read the first book, Charlie McCarthy's room was bigger than Candice's, and there.
I had a corner room. I had more ventilation.
And to do comedy, because we'd seen you on Saturday Night Live and starting over. Mm-hmm. There was a.
Well done, Harry.
Right? No, but there's a great comedic scene that you did in Starting Over.
Yeah, where
right,
I
with
sing
Burt
very
Reynolds.
badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Right.
was really fun.
Yeah. Who did Diane know you could be funny?
She was counting on it. She was hoping I could be funny.
Right.
And
It seemed to work okay.
yes, it did.
After 5 Emmys as Best Comedic Actress, you finally said, well, I'm just going to take myself out of nomination.
Yeah, it was enough.
Hell of a run,
Yeah.
right?
It was amazing.
Yeah,
Really
indeed.
amazing.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so I'm working at CBS at the time in the morning, and our ratings really sucked. And CBS's ratings weren't so great either, and our one and only hit was Murphy Brown, and we were forever, can we get Candice Bergen to come and, cook chicken with us in the morning, or who knows what that you do on morning television. And I actually got to be on the show once. I had my spot. And of course, that was after Katie Couric and Walter Cronkite, and it finally, 5 years in, I got to play myself. And it was really cool experience.
It was wonderful having real life journalists on Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
It would just made it, and because journalists loved the show, it was a sort of a water fountain show, and then every morning after it had been shown the night before, they would talk about it, because it was very true to what journalism was, what television journalism was in those days.
Absolutely. You should tell the story about how Don Hewitt, this isn't in the book, it might be in the book, but he wanted you to be on 60 Minutes, didn't he?
He did. He did. It's lucky for him that I said no, but but yes, he asked me when I was in my mid-20s or late 20s to do 60 Minutes, and I flew to Berkeley to do an interview with the student council, the radical student council at UC Berkeley, and it just was abysmal. And then he talked to me about it again about 15 years ago, and it caused a little ruckus among the accredited journalists on 60 Minutes, as you might imagine. So we pulled back.
This show is must-see TV for millions and millions of people, wins buckets of Emmys, and it gets to be early 1990s, and the show decides that Murphy's character is going to have a baby. How was that conversation?
Well, that was explored in great detail, because we also knew, we didn't know what the next step was for Murphy, because the show had been on, and really half-hour sitcoms should not, they kind of exhaust their natural material after 5 or 6 years. And if we'd been smart, we would have just ended it, but we were greedy. And so we thought, well, if the father of Murphy's baby is her ex-husband, and if she thinks of having an abortion and then decides against it and has the baby, we get to explore both sides of the right to life topic, which we did. We also knew that shows with babies tended to kind of
Tank?
tank.
Yeah.
And working with a baby, I mean, there were many babies, and they would swap them in, and you would sort of be wondering when the baby was going to cry and if it would be on your punchline. It was like this little grenade that you were carrying around.
What did W.C. Fields say?
Yeah.
Dogs are
never
babies.
work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Animals are babies. Yeah. So now we're really getting to a part where it was personal for me. Dan Quayle says something about, here's this Murphy Brown and Candice Bergen and what is
Dismissing the importance of fathers.
there you have it. And it was, to me, in my most, maybe realistic and/or cynical self, I said, this is kind of crap. I mean, this is just pay attention to me. It lived for 2 solid years.
Well, it lived intensely because it erupted during sort of the beginning of a presidential campaign, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and it was pegged to the platform of family values, and really, it was just blanketed everything. There was a picture of me as Murphy holding the baby above the fold on the front page of the New York Times, where I just sort of went out to get the paper, and then there were political cartoons and op-ed pieces, and it just kept going because it went the length of the campaign. And then Clinton adopted the platform of family values. And the irony never stopped.
Right. Was there some karmic a balance, though, in Dan Quayle's attempt to attack the show? Because if my memory serves me correctly, was there not a Dan Quayle joke in almost?
We were relentless.
Relentless.
Yeah, and he was due. I mean, he was due to get his. And he was also very savvy, because the remark about Murphy Brown had been deleted by his speechwriter, and he reinserted it. And it gave him, as a vice presidential candidate, instant recognition and an instant platform. And it wasn't our fault. Well, and really, I think I went to a fundraiser for Clinton during the whole thing, and Bill Clinton said, "Whoa, you're really in the center of the storm here." And I mean, it had an impact on the election, I think,
Huge.
without a doubt.
So huge. I just remember, because we used to interview you all the time, and it said, are we still talking about Dan
And
Quayle?
here we are.
And here we are. Oh, golly. Maybe you guys should get together on the golf course or something.
I've never
at some
met
point.
him.
Really? Never. Did you ever hear a word or nothing? Did you ever write him a note?
No,
Okay.
really.
Here's the tough turn of the night. So Murphy's going along gangbusters. You're winning Emmys. The audience loves it. CBS couldn't love it anymore. Chloe's growing up with her uncle as the
Surrogate father.
surrogate father. Your mother's down the street. It is this amazing, pretty darn close to perfect in a life that you're trying to make work as best you can. And Louis gets sick.
Yes, but let me just say that it's very hard for people in the entertainment industry to get anything like a relationship to work, because you are literally told on Thursday that you have a job in Warsaw on Monday, and you need to work. And so your life is continually disrupted and uprooted, sorry, uprooted. So we were both dealing with that, because Louis wanted to go back to Paris and he wanted to work in France. He wanted us to move to Paris. And I thought, I don't think I can do that much of France. And I had to work, so Louis bore the brunt of the commuting, and it was exhausting for him. And then he arrived once after a flight, and something was off. His speech was slightly slurry, and a friend from Paris came over to visit, and he said, "Has he had a CAT scan?" I said, "Well, no, why would he?" He said, so then it started, and it went for almost a year. And it was just one disease with different initials after another, and it attacked the base of his brain, and he really lost the ability to walk, to speak, to move. I mean, it was, and this was a man who was so dynamic, and so it was almost like it was target. What can we do to this man that will really fox him? It was just odd how it struck at the heart of him.
How awful.
Yeah, and when he was initially diagnosed a few years before with lymphoma, his hematologist said, he said, you know, the span of this disease is 5 years, and Louis didn't hear it, so we never mentioned it again. But he did also say, he said, you know, avoiding stress, avoiding fatigue, all of that will help extend your life. But instead, Louis went from California to Korea to Paris to, I mean, he just never stopped moving because I think he thought he could outrun it.
Outrun it, yeah. That would be sort of his,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Louis passes on, show ends, you do some other work, come back to New York, right? If I get the chronology right. Did you ever think you would fall in love again?
Well, I came back to New York because I did fall in love again.
There's the chronology.
And I thought that when I met my husband, that it was sort of fate and was accidental. But in fact, I didn't find out until the wedding dinner that it had all been a setup. And Don Hewitt, who created 60 Minutes, said, well, I'd love to give a dinner for you, because it's when he and I were talking about the possibility of my doing the show. And so I said, great. And then 2 nights before the dinner, he said, oh, and a man's going to come pick you up. His name is Marshall Royce. I said, fine. I thought he would be like a little round guy. And I didn't know that Don and Marshall were friends and that my name had come up. And Don said, well, would you like to meet her? And so I come downstairs. Here's this really attractive man. Whoa. And that was that.
That was that, right? I mean, it just...
He was the only man, except for one dinner, the one where I was home by 9, that that I had met, and he was a man that I just trusted immediately, and we also had in common the the event that his wife and my husband had died within a similar time frame, and we had both gone through. He had been married for over 30 years, but we'd both gone through it. So you share something very strong, and you know what it is to go through.
All right, so we get toward the end of the book, and there are it's page after page after page after page.
Of drivel.
Well, revelations, right? Well, let's do plastic surgery, shall we?
So plastic surgery. When I started Murphy, my eyes were so hooded that I had my eyes done after the pilot. And then a year later, the TV lighting is very harsh. The 2 muscles under my jaw were sort of catching the light, and I was getting complaints. And so I had those
Did
adjusted.
you just take them out, or what?
No, they shaved them and sewed them together. It was disgusting. And you saw no difference. So I got really very little bang for the buck. But I did that. And that's been it so far, except for the occasional siege of shots that I just find too painful to do more than once a year.
Right.
They only last for 3 months.
Yeah. But okay. People who watch television, like people in my house or the person to whom I'm married, will say, she's had great plastic surgery, versus many others who
Well, I have not had my face done, and some of my friends have had it done over and over.
Right.
And there is a point at which it's a bridge too far. Real. And
Yeah.
that's it. So I don't know that I will be joining that brigade.
Good choice, I think, on your
Yes.
part. Right. Prozac.
Yeah. I have primary insomnia, I think. Anyway, on my own, I don't sleep until 4 a.m., which is kind of when you get up at 8, a short sleep span, unless you're Charlie Rose. And I was getting really cranky, and I couldn't take hormones because of it. So I went to a doctor that my husband recommended, and I said, I need a personality transplant, and I need to sleep. So he said, try Prozac. And it worked. I mean, I drifted off, and it was just so heavenly to be able to fall asleep, and it made me so calm. It made me so calm that I couldn't cry at all, and which, as an actor, is a little bit of a drawback. And so I would read a script and I would say, are there any emotional scenes? Because I can't play them. And I would squinch my face. I was like, nothing was happening. And so after, I don't know, a few years, I went off the Prozac. And now I'm just cranky. And I take an Ambien every night, which I know is not recommended, but there you are.
Just don't drive the next day.
No.
It's a little Kennedy joke that I don't know if you're paying attention or not.
Yes.
Well, how about that?
Yes.
There's more. There's more.
Oh, I held nothing back. I don't know
No,
what.
it's really amazing. I want to go back to Chloe for a second because you say something fairly early in the book about that your father in particular, and your mother never said, I love you. They never told you that they loved you.
No, they didn't, but they were very good parents. My father was Swedish, and as you probably know, that's a very different mindset than, say, an Italian. And so there was no hugging or cuddling or, I love you so much. There was not that. And I struggled with that for a while because I would think, I'm going to tell my mother I love her. And she would come in to sort of say goodnight, and I'd be thinking, by the time she gets to the door, I'm going to tell her I love her. Then she would close the door. Tomorrow night I'm going to tell her I love her. But I was so terrified of saying that to anyone because I'd never heard it really. But that said, they did things with me. I would go on weekend trips with my father. We'd go riding, we'd go fishing. He was away for his work for periods of time, but they were, in many ways, very good parents, and I wish that I could tell them that.
Right. So you made sure when you had your own child that there would never be a question.
No.
Right?
And there never has been.
And there never has been.
I mean, there have been other complaints, but let me hasten to add. But she said, I very much enjoyed the position of being an only much-loved child. And so she has the confidence of a warrior.
You also, though, talk about in the book that Louis would come back from the road and he'd be making a film somewhere, and the re-entry into this household that we talked about before that was running so well with the schedule and the this and your brother nearby and everything else. How was that re-entry?
Always awkward. It was always awkward, and everything about it was awkward. There was a 9-hour time change, for starters. So he would arrive exhausted, and he would go to sleep, and I would be getting up when he was it was so, we were always adjusting to that. And by the time he adjusted, it was time for him to go back to Paris. And my brother would sort of step back. But my daughter's relationship after a few years in Los Angeles was primarily with my brother, because he was a very active uncle and had a great sense of humor. And and it was very tough for Louis, because he had to establish a bond with Chloe over and over again. It was not easy.
Did they build a bridge by the time?
They built a bridge during his illness. She was 9 while he was sick. She turned 10 just before he died. And she just went in and she started reading to him. She curled up, he was in a hospital bed in our bedroom, and she would curl up with him and read him books and stories, and told him that she loved him. And and when he was able to still get into a wheelchair, he would ask his nurse to go in, I want to see Chloe's room, and she would wheel him in there, and he would just look around the room. And I mean, yeah, I always think how robbed she was, because he would have been a great figure in her adolescence and in college, because he could have helped guide her and direct her.
She doesn't seem to have stumbled too much.
No.
Wow. So what does she do now?
She is the social editor at Vogue, and she was one of the youngest editors. I mean, she was 25 when she was hired. And she is perfectly suited, because she has superb social skills. I don't know where they came from. And she covers every major event in the city. She knows everyone of any import in the city. She's the most well-connected person you would ever meet. But she's a writer, so she misses writing.
When you and Louis would go to France and you were being introduced to his family, that wasn't an easy transition for you, was it?
Well, I spoke some French when we were married, but I had to sort of try to kick it into a higher gear. And it was not easy, because I love the French. I love most of the French. And what I found lately, just sort of in observing the French, is that the French have a particular kind of grace that I'm always stunned by. They can be all of the things we know them to be, but when it matters, they step up in a way that just brings me up short. And the latest time I saw that was this horrible crash in the mountains in France. That was such a tragedy. And here's this town in the mountains. They could have said, well, we don't want this. We don't want our lives. They built a monument overnight, a memorial. They took people in. They were present in a way that was so gracious and so sensitive. When America behaved like infants about attacking Iraq, and France said, no, we don't want to invade Iraq. And we threw wine in the toilet, we just poured it out. We called French fries freedom fries. It was really shameful, I thought. And when Iraq, well, it was just idiotic. And when Iraq proved to be perhaps a questionable idea, they never said anything.
Rubbed on
They never said, we told you so. They were only gracious about it.
What were summers like at Louis' place?
Louis has a house that belongs to his 3 kids now in the Southwest. It's very remote. It's 6 hours travel from Paris, no matter how you slice it. But it is in an area of France that is known as La France Profonde, which is the deep France that was never bombed, it was never invaded. And he found with his first wife a property there that had great mystery, and the oldest part of it was built in the 1500s and then added on. And so once you're there, you're in another time zone. You go to the market and people have diseases that they don't have today. I mean, they I should work for the tourist board, but
So it's like stepping into the Middle Ages.
yes, because that part of France is very medieval, and the villages are all sort of timbered houses and gambrels, and it's very unspoiled and very beautiful countryside. But it's also very rough. I mean, there's everybody okay? It's not the south of France.
Right. So Chloe will get married there this summer?
Yes. My daughter is being married the end of July because it's her favorite place to be. It's the place that she feels is her spot and that she's the most connected to. She's going to be married in the tiny town hall, which is literally as big as a third of the stage, which is where Louis and I were married. She's being married by the mayor, and then she's going back to the house, and we're going to have drinks in the front of the house and dinner in the garden and dancing in the barn. It'll be a tiny wedding. I mean, it'll be 50 people, but family and very close friends. And she's very happy, which is, after all you ask in life.
You're only, yeah, indeed. We say in our house, we're only as happy as our least happy child.
Yeah. Well, or as your only happy child.
Indeed. I wonder sometimes, and I first saw you in T.R. Baskin. We're the two who saw it.
Yes, exactly.
Who's the co-star?
Peter Boyle.
Peter Boyle.
And Jimmy Caan.
There you go. And you played a prostitute.
Who worked in an office building, so it was a little odd.
But that was the first time I saw you, and I remember just being kind of overwhelmed. I went back and I looked at some of the reviews today, and I thought, how was I so overwhelmed? And to have seen you through your life, there's a point in the book where you talk about how good looking you were and sort of the advantages that you had in your life, and that wrapped together in its own way was sort of a disadvantage. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do, because it's so important to people, and I've always tried to understand why it matters so much. And I never, because my father, first of all, warned me that beautiful women could get into trouble and get depressed and commit suicide because they had nothing to fall back on when they lost their looks. So I never had any vanity. And but I always noticed that I would enter a room and things would kind of stop for a second. And it's something to be reckoned with. And I think that when you're young and you grow up looking a certain way that people respond to, I think it slows down the process of discovering who you are, because people respond only to what they see. And it's in most ways a great blessing, but it is something to be dealt with.
Right. Do you think for a good portion of your younger life, people didn't see you for you?
Oh yeah. In fact, it's one of the main benefits of getting older, because it's like, it plays no factor.
Right.
And and that's sort of nice.
Yeah. We did an interview for an ill-fated show on NBC called Rock Center a couple of years ago, when you were appearing on Broadway. And we were out in the park, and I said, does anybody recognize you? And what'd you say?
No, they don't. And probably some of that is because I'm not on television every week in, week out. And part of it is because I think I don't look like I used to look. I'm heavier, I'm older, I'm...
Right. What is that like, though, from being that person who's on television every week and whose cover is on the face of People magazine and on and on and on and on and on, and you can pick up the phone, or your assistant can pick up the phone and say, Daniel? Oh, well, yes. How about 8:45? And
That passes.
What is it like to be on one side of it and then be on a different side of it?
It is very humbling. It is very humbling, and I didn't need humbling, frankly, because I start at a low level. But it's very humbling, and it took me a couple of years to adjust. And also, when you call, yes, hi, this is Candice Bergen. I'd like to tell you, how do you spell that? Miss Bergman, Miss Bergman. So you have to start over as another person, which is probably a good exercise.
Yeah. How did you like being on Broadway?
I liked it very much. I liked it very much. I had a few mishaps because I would drift off, which is not advisable when you're on stage. But I loved how much theater people do it for the work. Because in LA, the money literally grows on trees. I mean, and you've got things called double-wide bangers that are trailers that are expandable. So they're your own personal trailer that go for the length of the theater with a media center and a sauna. I mean, you're spoiled beyond all reason.
Double-wide bangers?
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
And that's what you want to ask for in your contract.
Yeah, talk about no chance. Just let me tell one more story, please. Do you have the sense of where you are now? Okay, so I'm 63. I still get to work. There's a big part of me that just feels so friggin' lucky. I'm so fortunate. In all the revelations in this book and everything else, I think I sense a person who really values their life, who really is appreciative of the journey you've been through. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a very close friend who's in AA, and I've gone to a few meetings with her. And one of the great things about AA is that they have the gratitude prayer. And I tried to do my own sort of personal gratitude prayer. Of course, I forget, but I think I just think, especially during the few years we've been at war in Iraq and Afghanistan, where you would read the bottom of the Times every morning of casualties at 19 years old, 21 years old, and you just think, they haven't even gotten to taste it yet. So as much as getting older is not for the faint of heart, we're blessed to be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah. You know what Betty Davis said?
Not for sissies?
That isn't what she said.
Okay.
It's 2 syllables, and did you know this? Yeah. Oh, you'll be disappointed to find out what she
now
said.
Now you've set them up.
Yeah, right. Terrible thing she said. Do we have a couple questions on cards? Here we go. We're going to do a couple questions
What did
on
Betty
cards.
say?
I can't say it in a room like this.
Of course you can. Are you kidding?
It's not for pussies.
Yes. How right she was.
There you have it. Thank you for saving me. And now they're all going to be that nice Harry Smith. Did you hear what he said on stage with Candice Bergen? Unbelievable. All these years.
Yes.
Yes.
Masquerading as a decent guy.
And see, you know better. So that's a couple questions from the audience. Would Murphy Brown be totally embracing of all the forms of social media today and its invasion of privacy?
You know, I think Murphy was first and foremost a journalist, so she would embrace the social media that would enable her to gather information more quickly, more thoroughly. And Murphy didn't really have a private life, you see, so it wouldn't have impacted her in that way.
You think about this for a second. Is it in your DNA? How funny you were tonight, how the lines just crackled out and the audience it was just rolling along no, it was like surfing over the laughter tonight. It was so great. Is that because you live in this house that your father, this is what he did for a living? Is it possible?
You know, it's because of Murphy. Murphy gave me a confidence level that I never had before. And it also, just as an actor, when you do theater, when you do anything that can be intimidating, and I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who, in one of his many wonderful books, said, I think, is it 10,000 hours? If you do something enough time, 10 years of Murphy Brown, I feel like I have that down. And so I do have a certain limited skill, and
you're darn good at it. What was your best acting moment when you really felt you achieved your goals?
You know, doing Murphy was just a dream job for an actor, and there were scripts that would swing from hilarity to the verge of tears, and the last year Murphy had cancer, and so that was beautifully handled by the writers, and it gave you great breaths as an actor. Well, actually, doing Love Letters with Alan Alda last winter was... Alan is such a consummate actor, and we worked very hard on it. We worked for weeks and weeks beforehand. So what it gave me was the satisfaction of a job well done, because we did the work. And so that was very valuable for that reason.
There you go. You used to take pictures.
Yeah.
For a living.
But now I don't see as well, and I'm not as handy with digital cameras, so I can't.
The question was, would you entertain publishing a book of your photography?
I would love to.
Particularly those of Alice Cooper, it says.
I lost those.
You lost those. Oh, it was
but,
from Linda Smith, who was the Alice Cooper wardrobe mistress in the 70s. So sorry.
I do have pictures of Huey Newton, Charlie Chaplin, Paul Newman, Muhammad Ali. I mean, I do have some great pictures.
Right. You said Paul Newman, and of people that I miss.
Yeah.
Right?
He did it right.
Oh my God.
He was one of the few and one of the first to give back, and I don't think anybody has given back in the way that he did. It was really magnificent.
Yeah, and sort of normal as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like stunningly, incredibly normal.
It was interesting. I met him with his brother once. That was not an easy row to hoe.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Because he just didn't have what made Paul.
Right. Ooh, tough. This is good. You have acted with a who's who of leading men in the 70s. Who were the best and the worst actors? And why?
Seriously, you expect me to answer that?
Well, who'd you love?
I loved working with Michael Caine, who is a great actor. He's a great actor, and it's sort of dangerous to work with because he's so talented, but he has a very contained energy level, so you sort of don't want to lose because if you can't do it the way Michael does it, the scene just is inaudible. Anthony Quinn was interesting to work with because he was so larger than life, and the first day he arrived on the set, he was preceded. We were on a set outside, down some stairs. He had a Tony Quinn was Mexican, and he had a Mexican valet who came down the stairs with a leather cast director's chair where Anthony Quinn was hand tooled on the back of the chair. So it was like everything but trumpets. It was like da, da, da. And James Spader was wonderful to work with. And you know who else? Bill Shatner, who's such a weirdo, but he is, I mean, Shatner is so talented.
Right.
He's just, and he has more energy. It's just dumbfounds you.
Cool. Going back to the wedding this summer, are you the typical mother of the bride?
I will see, but I probably am. Yeah, but it's great. The planning of it is the most fun, and
It's been fun?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because this is it arduous and are you a pain in the ass?
I think I'm always a pain in the ass, but my daughter and her fiance and I flew to France in February to plan, to sort of start the ball rolling, and we had the best time, and they lost our luggage, so we were in the same outfit for 4 days and deep in the country. It was great.
Right. Oh, this is good. Oh my gosh. This is a better question than any I asked, believe me. Do you have any regrets or the whole woulda, coulda, shoulda? Do you have a moment in your life when you thought, especially having written 2 memoirs now, is there a moment when you thought, I can't believe I didn't do that?
You know, I've wasted a lot of time, and I regret that because obviously we don't have that much of it. But I don't allow myself any regrets because I feel so incredibly blessed in my life that I just don't spend time on that.
Gotcha. I asked you about this 2 years ago. You had 2 strokes?
I had 2 clusters. I had a cluster of tiny strokes called TIAs, and that was a slight setback. But anyway, I'm good now, and but when you have TIAs, it doesn't leave you slack-jawed. I mean, you don't have to relearn speech, thank God. But I spent a fair amount of time just kind of sitting in the family room in our house, just sort of staring out the window. And it took time to come back from. I couldn't drive, I couldn't, and I realized I couldn't drive when I hit a car. That was a clue. And so now, and then I had another cluster of strokes. So I was best friends with everybody in the ER at Cedars-Sinai. And so now I just always think, I want to make sure I have my bag with me, because if it happens again, because it comes up and sort of fells you so unexpectedly that you don't want to re-experience it.
Gotcha. So the bag is handy in case?
Yes, I'm ready to move.
Never leave the house without clean underwear.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And here then is the toughest one of all. What is the one thing you know?
That's a great question. I know that it is all a miracle, is what I know. I think all the time that here we are and we're worried about, do I have enough dental floss when I get home? Can I get an appointment with a manicurist? Is somebody going to be promoted over me? And we're on this planet that, as far as we know, is unique in that it sustains life. And we are destroying it as fast as we can. And I also give thanks for gravity, because if it weren't for gravity, we'd all be bouncing off the roof. And I think that life and nature, and I just think it is all a miracle, and I don't think we can ever forget that.
in this miraculous life, every once in a while, someone like you comes along. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you.